session of the day and the conference. I am very pleased to introduce to you Sarah from the Morton-Mandan Library, here to talk to you about escape rooms.
Yeah.
I'm going to lock the door.
Okay. So for this, I'm going to talk about two different versions. One is what I'm calling the DIY escape room, and that is basically where you've done most of the work yourself. And the second version is where you buy a box that does basically all the work for you.
Right.
Before I get too far into it, is it not on? Okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just start over a little bit. I'm going to talk about two different versions of doing escape rooms. One is the version where you basically do it all yourself, and the second version is where you buy a kit that does basically all the work for you, and all you have to do is set it up. Before I get too far into it, is everyone familiar with what an escape room is? Or is there some confusion?
I guess I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. I will go over some of this a little quickly then. So with escape rooms, the general theme is that everyone who's participating is solving a series of puzzles and challenges to complete whatever the objective or goal is for the room that they are in. It's not always literally a room, that's just the name. Escape rooms always have a time limit. It is usually some variation of you escape, you lose, or in some of the more morbid ones, you die. They're almost always set in fictional locations. This could range from a jail, space station, very kind of generic themes. They could also get a little bit more specific, like the one that I will talk about later, which was Harry Potter themed or Game of Thrones themed. I've seen ones that have been Stranger Things themed, so there's a wide spectrum for how the theming for these escape rooms can be set up. Typically, when you're doing the rooms like this, the host will give a bit of a backstory or setup before the participants start the game. It gives them a little bit of an idea of what they are shooting for with trying to solve all of these puzzles. And then, of course, because the rooms have a theme, the puzzles typically tie in somehow to that theme, and how they tie in will vary depending on what the theme of the room is, and then also the age group you are targeting. Alright, so down a little bit. The ones you do yourself will mimic the paid events. Example around here would be Trapped in Bismarck. Very similar, just on a much smaller scale, since we don't have as much money as events like Trapped in Bismarck do, or the Space many times. And like I mentioned earlier, pop culture themes tend to be popular and will really draw in those big crowds. It gets the very passionate fans for these because they're excited to do something that ties into something that they are a big fan of. There is the general overarching story for mine, which I'll get into a little bit more specifics later. Participants were at platform 9 3/4, waiting for the train to take them to Hogwarts, but they have lost their ticket and they've got to find it in an hour or the train will leave without them. The great thing with doing puzzles and DIY rooms yourself is that they are very much more adaptable than the boxes. The boxes generally come with a preset age limit, but when you're designing it yourself, you can tweak, adjust, and modify, or just set up straight from the beginning to be for whatever age group you have planned on targeting. So the control is great for doing it yourself. Downside with doing them yourself and with these things that attendees may need specific knowledge. So if you are doing it on Harry Potter, then people who have not seen the movies or read the books may not be able to participate, or they will severely struggle. I realized I skipped a point on here. The rooms are always a mix of various kinds of puzzles, which I'll get into more detail later. They can vary from finding things to putting different pieces together that are hidden within the room to find what the clue is within those as you get them all there once you have found them. Okay, so when you are doing it yourself, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you are targeting your age group, because that will help you decide what your theme is and how you are doing the scenario and whatever the final goal is for the room. If you do it the other way, you're going to get caught in the middle of realizing you've either made it too difficult or too hard, or the theme just doesn't work for the age you were trying to work with. For mine, you'll see that I targeted teenagers and up, so this was not a children's one. You can easily do them for children, but that is not something we have done yet. So when you are looking for themes and all this setup, the internet is definitely your friend. The one that I did, I admit I did not do this originally. The plan that I found was on the Programming Librarian Facebook group. The librarian that did before shared a ton of her resources and was definitely willing to answer questions, so that was a great way to do it for the first time because somebody did the hard part of that initial setup for me. So all I had to do was adapt and modify a little bit as I went because I felt like making some modifications. For when you are doing prompts and other decor and theming, various different crafting sites and fan pages are great. The crafting sites and fan pages will often have recreations of things from the movies or the books or whatever your theme is. I have a lot of the things that I made that are over here that I will leave for you to look at after I'm done speaking, which is where I found most of them. And they are very highly detailed, so they fit in very well with the theming. So it's always thank you to the fans that make these great recreations, put them out there for other fans to duplicate. If you're looking for places to buy kits for things like puzzle boxes or lock boxes, Breakout EDU is a great site. The downside is that they are a little bit pricey, but when you pay that fee, you also get access to some of the pre-made escape rooms that they provide as well. But they also come with a kit with a series of locks, boxes, and then things like ultraviolet ink and then the little pen to activate it. So you have all the resources with that membership fee, besides some theming items to do the room with your payment to Breakout EDU. All right. So for preparation for doing the rooms yourself, like I said earlier, borrowing a script from someone else is a great place to start, especially if it's your first time, or if you know that there is a significant fan base for something in your community that you or no one on your staff is knowledgeable enough on to do a room well. If it's something that you are a big fan of, that's great, and you can certainly write the script yourself. But that is definitely where you want to start, so that you have the chain of the story, because it will tell you how to design your puzzles later on. So then once you have written the script, the thing you want to do is gather and create your props, because that will tie into the puzzles, and it will also help you hide the puzzles and the clues as you're going. You want the props first, so the clues and puzzles people are looking for aren't just standing out somewhere really obvious. All right. And then as you're creating the puzzles, it's a good idea to test as you go, especially if you are deviating from something preset, because you may find out that it doesn't work, or the way you have set it up or hidden something is too hard or too easy, or just simply it does not work with your space. I know from experience when I did mine, I had one piece that was hidden way too hard, so if I did it again, I would have moved it somewhere different. And then of course, you have to test as you go for those. And you'll want to make sure you're adjusting as needed, because things may just not work. It may not be a puzzle. It may be the way you have something set up, or you just need to rearrange within the space that you're using. You definitely want time slots for these, regardless of which kind of room you're using, because you will know from the beginning the maximum amount of time that it will take to do a room, and then you will need a buffer to have for reset in between. And if they get done ahead of time beforehand, that's great, but you don't want people having to walk in and have to wait a long time, or be disappointed that they can't participate because it was a walk-in and large groups beat them there. And from my experience as well, I would recommend being firm on whatever age limit you set. This is also for just target audiences the way we do with programming in general, but also because you don't want someone who will find the room too challenging trying to participate and have them being disappointed because they're struggling with it, or it's too easy and they finish too early and it is not a challenge for them. So this will be some examples of some of the clues and puzzles that you can do. And this is overarching and not necessarily extremely specific. Some of the most common ones are hidden objects, so you have something significant hidden somewhere in the room, and you can always be hidden in plain sight. That's one of the reasons why you want to have a ton of thematically appropriate stuff in your room, so it's harder to find these things. Altered objects are also common, where you have something that looks normal on the surface, but there's something that's off or wrong with them, which is what will point them to the next clue that they are searching for in the room, or could be the solution to an earlier puzzle. Assembling objects is also common. That's when you need to find several different things within the room, and when you put them together, there is something in common between them that is either a solution or another puzzle. Patterns as well, that often comes across with assembling objects, where you're trying to find what's the same. Codes or ciphers are also common, where you will find the cipher somewhere in the room, could be early on, and then you find the key later on, and you have to put them together to translate this code, which is often another puzzle, or it could be the answer to one of the combination locks you have somewhere else. Black light, UV light, depends on the theme you're doing, but it's also common where something will look very innocuous, but there's actually something with that going to reveal black light. So it adds another layer of challenge of something that looks innocent, but there's more beneath the surface and again hidden in plain sight. And locks are also extremely common, where they will find something with a lockbox, and you have to have them find whether it's the key or the combination to a combination lock hidden somewhere else. All right, so for setting up the room, you definitely want to do this the day before. Setup will take you longer than you think it will, and that is a lot of times just because you will get different ideas for how to arrange things as you are setting up, and it just gives you plenty of time to buffer to make sure that this is really the way you want it to be. You know, again, with the stuff, gather that definitely in advance before you start doing the setup. You don't want to be trying to do that all at once. I found from experience that following the script as I'm setting up, it definitely helps. You can certainly put up some of the general theming things beforehand and then start hiding the items for the puzzles, but you want to do those in order so that you can keep an eye on where things are hidden so that they're not too close together, or so that not everything is found out of order. All right. Then following the script, false trails, that is complicated. That is basically where you have a solution to the puzzle hidden somewhere, and then you lead them off track if you have enough stuff there. It could just be a dead end with just one item. And that just adds an extra layer of challenge for the participants and is a little devious on your part to make them think that something is significant, but it's actually not, because it doesn't go anywhere. You definitely want them to have a table to work on, especially when it's assembling things, and it just allows for teamwork, so that's not one person holding something and everyone is hovering around. If the room you're doing it in has windows that point inside your building, you would want to cover those up, because otherwise somebody could be watching from the outside and see where things are hidden. It may not necessarily give them the answer to a puzzle, but it will give them an advantage if they know where things have been stashed somewhere. All right, so this is an example of the room that I had when it was set up. There's a lot of detail in it, so some of it may not show up as well on this picture. There's also some things behind me in the corner. So you can sort of see from here how there is just stuff everywhere, and I tried to design the room to look like a waiting area as best I could for the train to come. All right. These green arrows are where actual clues or puzzle solutions have been hidden. And then, to prove a point, those red ones are false trails. Props. We will get into that, and I have some examples over here that if you want to come and take a closer look afterwards, you are certainly welcome to come up and take a look. Gathering, making, and some of your props will take the longest amount of time, especially if you're doing it on a pop culture theme. It just is going to be time consuming to make sure you do it right and that you have enough. You definitely want to think outside the box with these. You do not have to take things literally with these. If you find something that's symbolic and close enough that fans or participants will recognize as that's what it's supposed to be, that is great. Paper crafts are fantastic for this as well. You can make a ton of decent quality replicas just from cardstock or cardboard especially, and just folding it up. Those are things that you'll especially find on the fan sites. So just some examples that you can do with paper crafts are things like boxes for food or candies or that kind of thing. You can also do fake book covers. That's very easy to do, where you mock something up on just some paper and tape it on to, a weeded or donated book and stick it somewhere, and it can work for that. You can also do wall art, especially if you're trying to cover up things that are attached to your walls and don't want to come down, just to help with the theming or to hide a puzzle there if you feel like it. Okay, these are some of the examples of props that I made. So the two jars on the left, those are just some glass jars that I had around my home, and I found some labels on a fan site, so it was easy enough to just print off the labels, cut them off, and tape them onto the glass. The one on the left, during the escape room, was filled with colored water to make it look more like a potion bottle. Then the one next to it, that just has some dried citrus peel in it, but then will work thematically because the label claims that it's dragon scales, and it looks somewhat like that. That little box there in the middle, that's one of the paper crafts I found. I just printed it off on cardstock and folded it up, and then had a sturdy prop. Then in the middle, there's some of the book covers that I referenced. If you can find covers, depending on your theme, that will look more like parchment or kind of old-timey, that works really well. You can also age paper fairly easily by coating it in a really strong tea and then sticking it in your oven on a really low temperature, and then just watching it like a hawk so it doesn't start on fire. Here at the end, it's a great example of something not being literal. At one point, my participants needed to find a sword. I did not have a sword, but I had a letter opener that was the one there on the left, so I hid that, and it worked for my theming. Alright, and then to help put this all into perspective, here's an example of how the puzzles can work. So in the room when I did it, participants I picked was their first clue, which pointed them to look in the back of the 7th Harry Potter book, which had this Marauders map mock-up that I made, which I do have up here. It was also one where I had one of the first false trails. I had a mock-up from one of the in-series newspaper articles that referred to something that would have happened at the end of the books. So first false trails there, but this was the right answer to find. This map hidden in the back of the 7th book. There was a name marked out on it, which would tell participants that they needed to look for a rat, which in my case was a mouse puppet. Again, for things not being taken literally, which had another riddle on the bottom of it, and through a series of a couple more puzzles, they eventually whipped back to the solution to unlock that directional box, the directional lock on this box, which continued on with the game. That is the end of my section on doing it yourself. I will be willing to answer some questions once I finish talking about this part on escape room kits. Escape room kits are a relatively new thing. They began a couple years ago, and they're great because everything you need is in the box. Worst case scenario is that you may have to reprint some things later on, which I will discuss briefly. Price varies. They're not super expensive, which is great for a lot of libraries. They're very budget friendly. What I've seen, they typically cost about $20 to $50 depending on the kit and where you are looking for them. There's a ton on Amazon. I've also seen them in the toy section at places like Target or Walmart. The downside with the kits is that you have to be careful about repeatability, and that's because there's a lot of paper or cardboard items in these kits. So you want to make sure that you are making copies of the single-use items. Some kits are great. The one that we've used, the Escape Room in a Box, the Werewolf Experiment, on their website they have documents for all of the things that are single-use only. So they are well aware that it could be used a lot by facilities that want to do it more than once. But for any of the other kits, just plan ahead and make photocopies of anything that you might need to reuse, that you don't have an oopsies later on and find that you can't do it again. Another downside with them that's not necessarily a downside in the big picture is that you really can't control the difficulty. All of these come with a recommended age limit on the box. From what I've seen, you want to stick to that age limit. It would be very hard to deviate and make it easier without just providing a lot more hints or having some of the puzzles already solved or partially solved for people. However, the benefit is that you do not need any specific knowledge. All the knowledge you need to do the game is provided for you in the kit. For these kits, you definitely want a large table because almost everything is based on paper and cardboard or maybe some small plastic objects or items in the box so that everyone who is participating can see it all at the same time. Reset with these is, in general, very quick and very easy because you just need to gather the pieces and replace the one-time use items. However, you do want to keep an eye on some of the small pieces. I know with ours, for example, and slight spoilers, one of them has a pencil that has a cap that comes off and has some very tiny pieces of cardboard on them that react under a UV light. So if you lose those little cardboard pieces, you can't finish the game. So keeping an eye on the small pieces is very important, and in some cases you may just want to take those pieces and hold on to them yourself so that they don't disappear in the mayhem. And with these kits, because everything is in the box, they are great for outreach programming because you just need a room somewhere and that box and yourself to supervise and keep an eye on things. Okay, day of event, this applies to both versions regardless of if it is one you have set up for yourself or if you're using a kit. Like I mentioned earlier, you want to have a buffer between time slots. I found, at least from when I did the whole DIY room, that having about 10 to 15 minutes is a safe bet. It gives you plenty of time to reset or to go check with the rest of your staff, take a short break yourself, because it can be more intensive than you realize to sit in there and supervise the whole time. You want to make sure you have hints prepared in case people are struggling. Downside, if you're doing it in a room yourself, you probably have to write those hints yourself. However, some of the kits may provide the hints for you. This Werewolf Experiment one does provide you hints to give to people. And obviously you want to stay in the room. That's not just for general supervision, but it's also to prevent any cheating or trying to tamper with any of the puzzles, especially if it's a DIY room and you have made a lockbox yourself, you don't want someone just trying to rip open the box and bypass the lock. I've also found that a visible timer is very helpful for participants. You can do this if you have a smart TV, you can pull it up on there, or just have a laptop somewhere, a digital timer, something to help them see where they are and how much time you have left. It's also a great incentive if it gets into being a bit of crunch time for them at the end.
How much time do you give them usually?
If it's a kit, you go by what the box tells you. When I did the DIY room, I did it for an hour. So it's really, if you're setting it up yourself, it's how long you feel like it. It really is a combination of the age group, how many puzzles there are, and how hard you have made it to be.
I have a question. How many people usually are involved in one session of that?
For the kids,
Yeah,
the box will
kids.
tell you.
The kids.
For the room, a lot of those depend on how big your room is and how many you're comfortable with.
So what would you say? Like that werewolf one? I mean, how many?
The werewolf one caps at 8.
Okay.
So they recommend, I believe, it's 3 to 8 on the box. But for those other DIY kits, you go by what the box says.
Do they work as a team?
Yes.
Okay. Thought they did.
Yes, the whole point of the escape rooms is that they are a cooperative effort. You could do it by yourself, but it could be a challenge to get it all done. All right. And then, wrap up is easy. People win or they lose. It's great to ask feedback on the fly while it is still fresh in their minds. You also could consider, since you have registration, sending out a form afterwards for their thoughts on it, for things of how you could do things differently, or if you want to do one again. That is the end of my presentation. Are there any other questions, or do you want to come up here and look at some of the props I brought?
I have a question.
Yes.
How many of these different ones have you done?
We have done 2. The first one I did, the DIY room, that was last summer, and we just about a month ago.
I know you said the programming library.
Yeah.
Are there other web,
Specifically, that's what I've seen them on the most.
are there a lot of different topics on that one?
It varies in how long the documents have stayed up there on that Facebook page. I know that's where I saw one where it was this one. That's where somebody talked about the Stranger Things one. I saw someone who referenced, I think, doing Pride and Prejudice, but they didn't share it. So you might at least get ideas for themes on that group as well.
Were there any for younger? Or is this not something that works well with 4th through 5th grade, middle school age group?
You can definitely do it 4th through 6th. I do adult programming for Morton-Mandan, so I don't follow the post talking about the younger ages as closely. So it's entirely possible that some are on there. I just didn't see them or follow it as closely because that's not the programming that I do. But you can definitely do escape rooms for that age group.
Are you talking about doing it for class, for classroom?
No, I'm public.
Oh, okay. Because I've bought some Teachers Pay Teachers for a certain, like Revolutionary War and stuff, where it's all, the clues are all based on content area.
On a content area?
And that's the one thing that Breakout EDU can do if you pay the fee for it. You'll get access, they'll say, it's a history theme for 3rd or 4th graders, and give you all that information. I don't have a lot of info on Breakout EDU because it gets payment locked, and without you paying the fee, you can't see a whole lot of it.
So what is the fee then for Breakout?
I believe for the kit to get 1 set of the locks and puzzle box and the additional materials to follow their preset room is about $275. That gets you access to their whole catalog of different rooms. And from what I understand, there's quite a lot of them, but it's locked behind the account.
So you'd need to be doing a regular one.
Yes. If you're doing it one-off, you probably want to just get your feet wet with doing one of those kits that you can buy, since it is inexpensive and time efficient. Any other questions? Alright, well, if you want, I've got a lot of my paper craft props up here if you want to take a closer look at them. I also brought along a copy of the Harry Potter escape room script. So if you'd like me to email that to you, I can take down your contact info and get that sent to you.
Sarah, you have another question?
Oh, yes.
I was wondering, you know, sometimes you'll see the posts where, you know, we escaped or, you know, we didn't. Do you guys do that and like do it for social media or anything?
I didn't. I wish I had thought of doing that the first time around. That's definitely something you could do, especially if you have an active Facebook page. That would be a way to draw some interest in.
Do you want to do a Harry Potter one? I want to do it. No. See, and that's the thing is when you have this screen, you can just take it and change the stuff. What, should I for my Gmail or on the library one? Which library one should I give it? What's that for the computer? GCP.
Go see the box. Yeah, go look at them. I do have the box kit. You want to take a slight peek at it? Just good job.